If you spent any time in occult or magical circles, you'll know that there's a constant tension between experience and explanation. On one side, you've got people saying just do the ritual, don't overthink it. On the other, you've got those insisting that magic is really just a dressed up interaction with the subconscious. Mind Over Magic by Richard Kaczynski plants itself squarely in the middle of that tension and talks about things properly. At its core, the book is about the psychological foundations of magical practice, but, and this is important, it's not dismissive. Kaczynski doesn't come in swinging with a reductionist attitude, trying to suggest that it is all in your head. Instead, he asks a more important question. How does the mind participate in magical experience, belief, symbolism, trance, and transformation? Whether you believe in spirits as literal external beings, internal archetypes, or something far stranger, the book remains useful. One of the biggest strengths of Mind Over Magic is how grounded it feels. Kaczynski clearly knows his occult history, but he also knows his psychology, and he doesn't treat either as superior. He references figures like Crowley, Jung, and various ceremonial and esoteric traditions without turning the book into an academic slog. You never feel like you're being lectured at. Instead, it feels like someone knowledgeable sitting across the table saying, let's unpack what's really going on here. The writing style is another big plus. This isn't flashy occult prose dripped in purple mysticism, nor is it dry academic analysis. It's conversational, measured, and thoughtful, and that makes it especially suitable for people who are already practicing magic and want to understand what they're doing on a deeper level. It's the kind of book where you find yourself pausing mid-chapter to reflect on your own rituals, habits, and assumptions. Now, a lot of readers praise the book for helping them clarify their own relationship with belief. Kaczynski talks about belief not as a fixed, rigid thing, but as a tool, something that can be engaged, suspended, or reshaped depending on the work being done. For chaos magicians in particular, this lands very well. But even if you're firmly rooted in a traditional system, there's value here. The book doesn't try to tear belief down, it tries to make it conscious. Another commonly mentioned strength is how well the book handles altered states of consciousness. Trance, visualization, ritual focus, and the role of imagination are explored in a way that validates lived experience without turning everything into fantasy. If you've ever wondered why some rituals feel alive while others fall flat, this book gives you language, a frame and frameworks to understand that difference. On the other side of the coin, the most frequent criticism is that Mind Over Magic doesn't give you much in the way of practical exercises, but this is not a workbook. If you're looking for step-by-step techniques, rituals, or drills you can immediately apply, you may come away feeling a little unsatisfied. The book is far more about interpretation, understanding, and internal orientation than about telling you what to do next. It's really about getting the context right before reading the material. However, for some readers, especially beginners, that can feel frustrating. There's an assumption here that you already have some experience with magic, or at least a serious interest in it. If someone picks this up expecting a how to do magic using psychology manual, they might miss the point entirely. Another criticism that comes up is that the psychological framing can feel threatening to people who strongly prefer a literalist worldview. If your practice is deeply rooted in external spirits, objective astral realms, or strict metaphysical hierarchies, parts of this book might feel like they're pulling the rug out from under you. Even though Kaczynski is careful not to outright deny those perspectives, It's less that the book says you're wrong, and more it says there are other layers to this, which can still be uncomfortable. But let's face it, challenging your worldview, which you should be doing all the time anyway, can be very uncomfortable. But that said, one of the things I personally think Mind Over Magic does exceptionally well is encourage intellectual honesty. It invites you to notice when you're outsourcing power to symbols, spirits, tools, and traditions, and then asks what happens when you reclaim awareness of that process. Not to strip magic of its mystery, but to deepen it. There's also a subtle maturity to this book that people often comment on. It doesn't pander to ego, power fantasies, or the idea that magic is about domination. Instead, it frames magic as a dialogue between intention, perception, and meaning. That makes it especially valuable for practitioners who've been on the path for a while and are starting to ask quieter, more profound questions. If I had to sum up who this book is for, I'd say it's ideal for thoughtful practitioners, system hoppers, chaos magicians, ceremonial magicians with a reflective streak, and anyone interested in the intersection between consciousness and the occult. It's less ideal for people who want instant results, flashy techniques, or rigid dogma. In short, Mind Over Magic is a lens, not a spell book, grimoire, or instruction manual. It helps you see your practice more clearly, understand why it works when it works, and why it doesn't when it doesn't. And if you let it, it can quietly rewire how you think about magic altogether. All right, just want to have a look at some quotes from the book that I pulled out. Right, for these reasons, Christopher Bader and Carson Mencken argue in The Paranormal America that the paranormal is normal. Those without any kind of paranormal belief are statistically the oddballs. I like that actually. It's the same as using the term supernatural. You know, nothing's super about natural, it's just natural. So, we use these terms paranormal and supernatural, and really they don't really make sense when you really think about them. So I just thought that was a good quote, so I wanted to pull that out. I've only got two quotes here, so let's have a look at this one. The clothes make the magus. In the 1956 Merry Melodies short Bugs Bonnets, a pothole and a poorly latched delivery truck sends an array of hats floating into the woods, where they randomly fall on the heads of Bugs Bunny and his bungling but persistent nemesis Elmer Fudd. With each hat that lands on their heads, Bugs and Elmer automatically assume the personality associated with that headgear. Hilarity ensues. Introduced as a mock educational film on psychology, it was truly prescient, as research decades later would support the idea that our clothes indeed influence how we perceive ourselves and even how we behave. What is true for hats or other clothes extends to what magicians wear or doesn't wear in ritual. Um, Very pertinent. I mean, we often ask the question, why do we wear robes in when we go, well, specifically in terms of when you're doing ceremonial magic? Why do you have robes? Why do you wear them? Why do you put them on before ritual? Does it have a purpose? And yes, it does. And that quote itself, it just kind of like gives an explanation or an idea of what you'll be faced with when you read this book. It's about taking these practical things that we have in our magical practices and our ritual work and examines it from all different angles, mostly psychological. It's Mind Over Magic, and as I said, Kaczynski really does know his psychology, but from a whole lot of other angles as well. Really examines why we do it and why we get the effect that we do when we do it. So great book, fantastic, loved it, and definitely recommend it. But as I said, it's definitely not a 101 book. It's not for anybody who's looking for spell works or ritual formats or anything like that. This is a discussion of magic itself, of occultism, of your practice, and examining your own practice from all these different perspectives. So, do bear that in mind. But excellent book anyway. Okay. Thanks for watching. The link will be in the description and up the top probably to go and buy the book on Amazon if you'd like to. I do get a commission from those purchases, and I really, really thank you for that, because I then go on to buy other books that I can then review. Okay. All right. Have a good one. Cheers for now.